Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Iris Wagstaff, and I am a STEM Program Director at AAAS and also the NSF PI on the grant that is supporting this webinar series. We're glad that you're joining us today. This is the second webinar in our webinar series this year. This work is part of a grant titled Developing an Evidence-Based Best Practices Community for Supporting Low-Income, High-Achieving Students in STEM Education and the Workforce, and this work is supported by the National Science Foundation. Also, as part of this grant initiative, we are convening two STEM symposia. We convened the first symposium last year in September, where we engaged over 650 STEM PIs, STEM scholars, as well as those from the broader STEM education community. Also, our next STEM symposium is planned for the same time frame, so plan to join us again in September of next year. Finally, I'd just like to mention that if you'd like more information on this project and what we're working on throughout the rest of this year, please visit our AAAS STEM Initiative website at https://www.stem.AAS.org. So next, I'd like to acknowledge our advisory board members. They have been working with us since the end of 2018. And I just really like to thank them for all of their support and input over the last few years. And that's Karen Birch, David Brown, Kelly Mack, Yvette Pearson. And by the way, Yvette Pearson was our first webinar presenter on March 30th. She presented on research and evaluation. So in case you missed that webinar, please visit our website where we have the webinar recording as well as the PowerPoint slides there for you to view in case you missed that. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge Ivory Tolson, who's also one of our advisory board members. So next, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. We're really excited to have Eve Riskin with us. She is a professor and associate dean of diversity and access at the University of Washington College of Engineering, and she will present today on recruiting best strategies for your STEM program. And I will hand it over to Eve now.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Wagstaff. I'm really happy to be here, and welcome to all of you out there, and good afternoon. So I'm going to start first and talk a little bit about my background, and then I will talk about two different STEM grants for which I was and am currently PI. So starters, as Dr. Wagstaff said, I'm a professor of electrical and computer engineering at the University of Washington. I am finishing my 30th year. My primary research has been in image and video compression. But about 20 years ago, I started getting interested in diversity and diversity programming. And so in 2001, UW got one of the first advanced grants in the first round, and I became faculty director of that program. So I've been doing that almost 20 years. I later then joined the College of Engineering, working first on the academic affairs. But that program included diversity, and I realized that my biggest passion was for diversity, and so I became PI of a program called STARS that I will talk about later on. And then in 2014, I moved to become Associate Dean, just working on diversity and access, and I will be doing that until September of this year. Then I'll be going on sabbatical, so I have the question marks because I will stay as faculty director of Advance, and I will stay as faculty director of the STARS program, but then I will we'll see what happens. So I'm very excited to go and maybe even do a little less work. Okay, so here are the two STEM grants that I'm going to talk about. The first was called Engineering the Husky Promise. It went between 2010 and 2014. And then I'll spend most of my time talking about the current STEM grant, and which is called the Red Shirt in Engineering Consortium. And this is a 6-institution STEM consortium, and a big part of it is the STARS program I just mentioned. So I will focus on that and then talk about how we wound up getting the STEM consortium grant. Okay, so the first grant is called Engineering the Husky Promise. Husky Promise is a UW term. Husky is a dog, that's our mascot, and the Husky Promise means that anybody who is eligible for a Pell Grant or what was called the State Need Grant would have their tuition and fees paid. And so we kind of made a cute little title, and I will talk about that. Okay, so first of all, it took me 4 times to get the grant funded. And actually it almost got turned down the 4th time, but thankfully the program manager did fund it. So sometimes it takes persistence. If he had turned it down the 4th time, I was going to apply a 5th time. And that grant was focusing on just students in engineering, primarily underrepresented minorities, as defined by the National Science Foundation, women, and students from Washington State community colleges, namely transfer students. Back then, the STEM program was 85% funds for scholarships and 15% could go to programming and staff support. It's changed now, and I'll talk about that. But in the old days, the University of Washington College of Engineering had a really brutal post-generals education model. And what that meant is our students would enter UW regardless of their interests. And then they would spend typically 2 years taking prerequisite courses and then apply to an engineering department. And it was brutal. In the old days, maybe 80% of the students got in, so I didn't like the model, but 80% got in. But by the time we fixed it, very recently in 2018, about half of the students would get in and half of them would not be admitted to a single engineering department. And so, as you can imagine, this caused enormous amounts of stress for the students, and you can just imagine who was, really treated badly in our system. It was, of course, the first-generation college students and the students from low-income backgrounds. So with that first grant, we gave most of our funds to the transfer students because they applied directly to their department, and we knew they would at least be able to get an engineering degree. And we also did have a small number of freshmen. The good news is in 2018, we changed our model, so now the students apply directly to the College of Engineering or directly to the Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering. And so we have gotten rid of the really very toxic system. And most of you probably already out there have that system. It's the right thing to do if you're at a large public where resources in engineering are limited. Okay, so what were the recruitment strategies we used for the first grant? A really important one for us turned out to be word of mouth. In part, the first year came after the students were already at UW. So we put the word out to our engineering faculty and especially professional advisors. So these are the professional staff members who work in departments and they're on the front lines with the students. So we put the word out that we are looking for students from low-income backgrounds that could use some extra support. If you find students who are struggling, please let us know. And then we were able to meet the students and, encourage them to apply for scholarships and often give them a scholarship. And it was just such a rewarding, it was so rewarding and a privilege to be able to do that. We also have a summer math academy. Here's a picture of them in their purple t-shirts. And these are, target students primarily from first generation low income and rural communities. And we would also, we knew those students because they would have spent a summer with us the prior year before their senior year of high school, and so we knew them. And this grant was it was really rewarding. Because primarily we focused on transfer students, we had an amazing cohort of students. We had, adult or independent and returning students. We have students that I call two young heads of households. So, there were at least three of them. These are, and I'll just focus on one. It was a young woman her parents couldn't take care of the kids. One was on drugs, the other was in prison. And she dropped out of high school at age 16 or 17 and started, breaking child labor laws to work as a waitress to support her younger brother and sister. And then many years later, in her mid to late 20s, she then finally got the kids, established and went back to community college and then applied to one of our departments, was admitted, and we found her and we gave her a scholarship. And then I met with her senior year, and she wound up, of course, doing very well here. One quarter, she even made the dean's list. And what I learned when I met with her from her story her senior year, she had done a internship the prior summer at a company, and they were having a hiring freeze. However, they offered her a permanent full-time job during the hiring freeze because she was so terrific. And if you think about it, it's a lot easier to be an engineer when you're about 30 than it is to raise a family when you're 17. And when she told me, so she had already accepted the job, and I said, I really wish you had come to talk to me because I could have talked to you about negotiating because, research shows women don't ask. I would have been happy to discuss this with you. And she said, well, I went in there and I knew what I wanted, but they offered me more than I wanted. And I was so stunned I couldn't talk. So then they offered me a signing bonus. And so that, and that's where I wanted to write a chapter of my book, When Good Things Happen to Good People. But that moment right there just, told me why do we do this work? So she was amazing. We also had students who were parents. We had refugees from Africa who were all of these students were really smart. They just needed a bit of extra support. So it was a really rewarding grant. And every year we would celebrate them. We would go out to dinner at a close by restaurant. And here's a picture one year of the students. It was a great, I really enjoyed that grant. Okay. So moving on, the second STEM grant for which I'm PI, and it's current, is called the Red Shirt in Engineering Consortium. So now I'm going to go into actually not just a bit of background, but a lot of background. So I'm going to talk about the UW STARS program. Okay. And what is STARS? So STARS stands for the Washington State Academic Red Shirt Program. And first of all, you can see the use of the somewhat tortured acronym. That's a big thing with NSF. If you're getting an STEM grant, I would wager at least half of them, you have to come up with some acronym. Some are more tortured than others. But I have to tell you, this acronym STARS has worked really well. And it only took, several months to come up with it. So an academic red shirt program was originated at the University of Colorado Boulder, where there they called it a gold shirt program because that's their color. And for years, when I would meet with my colleagues, we were complaining about our miserable, post-general education admissions model that was really hurting our students. And my colleague, who was then my colleague Scott Winter, he would always say, well, we need to have a purple shirt program because, again, purple is our color. And there is a typo there that should say, on the second line, it should say an NSF STEP grant. So in 2012, the NSF STEP program, and STEP stands for Science Talent Expansion Program, they had a program called Graduate 10K Plus, where they had funding from Intel and General Electric. And the idea was to graduate 10,000 more STEM degrees. And so we applied collaboratively. So we partnered with our colleagues over at Washington State University, even though we're football rivals. And we submitted the grant together, and it was awarded in 2013, and we then started this program. And you can see we have our logos. We're purple, they're crimson and gray. The goal was to increase the number of degrees going to students from low-income backgrounds in engineering and computer science. And I will talk more about what is this concept of a red shirt program. Okay, well, actually, I'm going to back up because and tell you a little more. What is a red shirt program? Well, you may be familiar with athletics, and so I think of a quarterback. It's very common for a football quarterback, and I can say his first year because football players are always male, to not play on the team the first year. Instead, he's on the team and he trains with the team, but he doesn't participate, until really his second year. So that's the concept we're using here. I guess it's kind of a metaphor. We're not as strict as football. There's no concept of NCAA eligibility, but basically what we're saying is students who come from high schools that are high poverty or may have less rigorous curricula are going to arrive at universities and not be ready to be put in Calculus 1, Physics 1, and Chemistry 1 their very first semester. Instead, let's give them some extra preparation up front, and then they will enter the core and key prerequisite. So that's the model. And you can say the tortoise beat the hare, slow and steady wins the race. So that's the model. Again, it originated at Boulder. And something we've noticed throughout our Red Shirt Consortium that I'll talk more about is that all of the programs have 4 key pillars that we provide to our students. And here at UW now, our program is actually 2 full years that we have the students versus 1 year. So it's, anyway. So what is important, starting from the darkest shade of purple, that's mastery of the basics. So our students need to master and become a master student. They need to be able to do well in calculus, chemistry, physics, computer science. Okay, I'm going down. All of the programs have some kind of community building because, of course, you all know research shows that being in a cohort can help student retention and success. Then going to the left, we work with our students on skills development, so professional development, personal development, networking, all kinds of things that, if you come from a privileged background where your parents were engineers or professors, this stuff you know about. But if you're the first in your family to go to college, or, we have students where the parents, they didn't even go to high school. So now imagine you go to a dinner, what fork are you supposed to use with the salad? So all kinds of wraparound support to help the students become the wonderful professionals they are winding up to be. And then lastly, and probably what I think is most important, is this idea of intrusive advising. And intrusive advising is a well-known concept. I kind of like to think of it, I even call it in-your-face advising. Because, and we have a wonderful director of STARS, her name is Sonia Cunningham, she's on the call, and you'll see her picture later. But these students bring many challenges with them. Some of them have family issues, they've grown up in poverty, they struggle with the imposter syndrome, they see how competitive this university is, and there's obviously financial problems. And so sometimes there are problems that could be readily solved with some small amount of money or some amount of attention from an advisor or a faculty member, or sometimes the students really need professional counseling. Well, it is critical to be able to sort that out so you can get the student the help they need so that they can be successful. Okay, so here are the demographics of our STARS students over the first 6 years. We're currently finishing up our 7th cohort, and Sonia and her team have already admitted the 8th cohort. So far we've had about 240 students. We are 41% women. Our freshman classes now in engineering at UW are 35% women, so we're doing better. Over 80% have Pell Grants or federal financial aid. about half are underrepresented minorities, and over 2/3 are first in their family to go to college. So, you know, we're reaching the students we want to support. Okay, so who is eligible for STARS? And this is a picture of one of our cohorts of STARS. I think this is cohort 3. And you can see when the students are new during the Bridge program, we give them all a purple sweatshirt, and I think it helps them, you know, kind of feel like they belong. It's also, as a faculty member for me, it's really great because it helps me recognize many, you know, the students, even if I'm not working with them as closely as the staff are, because I recognize the sweatshirts. So here they are at one of our libraries. Okay, so we sort out, you know, we find students to encourage them to apply to STARS. So we're looking for students who are Washington State residents, who are either U.S. citizens or permanent residents. And again, they need to be eligible for some kind of financial aid, whether the Pell Grant, federal financial aid, and that's our preference if possible, but also there's students who, again, get something called the Washington College Grant. It used to be called the State Need Grant. So our state is trying to support all low-income students with scholarships. Again, the student needs to say that their intended major on their application to UW is either engineering or computer science, and we're primarily looking and targeting students who come from under-resourced high schools in Washington, which we define as, you know, more than 30% of the students are on free or reduced price lunch. Okay, so, and we have found that our students, you know, through surveys that our evaluation team has done, they feel more attached to the college, to either engineering or computer science. They're more confident in their math and science abilities. That's the mastery of the basics, and also in their time management skills, networking skills, and interviewing skills. That's the professional development. They're more familiar with resources here at UW, and they're more comfortable asking for help. In addition, we found as a side effect, their friends actually benefit who are not in STARS, because the STARS students help their friends learn about all the resources at UW. So, and sometimes I've heard from faculty that the STARS students drag their friends with them to office hours. So as a result, our evaluation team has shown that students who are in these redshirt programs normally, and all of you who were engineers, if you remember, by the end of your first year of college, which was a big slog, you know, you felt quite beat up. I know I did. But the STAR students are feeling less beat up by the first year, say, than what one expects on average. Okay. And so how are our students doing? Well, this is the stuff that is, I actually did not expect such fantastic results. So what we're showing here over the first 6 cohorts are the mean grades in the various prereqs, calculus, chemistry, physics, and computer science between our STARS students and between a comparison group of students from similar backgrounds. So you can see that, you know, our students are significantly outperforming the comparison group. And again, through the mastery of the basics, the model is that our students first take a course, whether it's STARS Math, STARS Chemistry, STARS Physics, or STARS Computer Science. So they take a course that is taught by one of our instructors, and then they go into the regular prereq course. So our students take Calculus 1 their second quarter at UW instead of going into Calculus 1 at the beginning. And the course that we teach them, the math is actually harder than Calculus 1, and that's why they're doing so well. I'm particularly excited by the computer science scores, especially right now in Computer Science 1, because that course at UW is notorious for being a weed-out course and having 700 students in a room, and they has been heavily determined who gets to be a computer science major. So we are thrilled that our students are doing well now in Computer Science 1, and hopefully they'll continue to improve in the second course. And our partners over in computer science are also very supportive of the program. Okay, I see I'm getting some questions, and I think I'm going to keep going through, and then I will come to them, if that's okay. Thank you. Let's see. Okay, so just some retention data for STARS. The first year, the students were not selected by Sonia's process that I'll get into. They were selected by me and a couple other staff people. It did not have an interview, and we didn't have a bridge program, and so there the retention was lower than it has been in all of the ensuing years. If you look just at the bottom row, overall we're having either 80% retention or graduation. Our third cohort will be graduating in June. So 80% retention or graduation, either in engineering or computer science. That goes up to 83% if we include other STEM majors at the University of Washington, and 96% if we include the students throughout UW. And so some students decide they want to study business or public health or physics. Sonia has helped them find what their passion is. English even. Okay, so now I'm going to get to the STEM grant. And that is the one that is called the Redshirt in Engineering Consortium. So in 2015, the STEM program had morphed so that you could get 40% of the funds to run programming and hire staff. So I primarily worked with Professor Janet Callahan, who was then at Boise State University. She is now the dean at Michigan Tech University. But we brought in some friends and colleagues. So we put together a consortium of 6 universities, of course Boulder, because they were the original Redshirt program, and we included our friends from Washington State, Boise State, UC San Diego, because I had a friend there and I knew she would do her part and send me the forms on time, and anybody who tries to put together a big grant might understand what I'm talking about. And then University of Illinois, because our previous dean was from there. So again, it was a grant for 60% of scholarship funds throughout the consortium and 40% other support. Okay, and so here is, a picture of all of our logos. Most of them, again, are acronyms. You can see on the left are students from UW again. The middle, those are Boulder students with, I think that's the human buffalo, and they have a real buffalo there. And on the right, those are students from Illinois. You can see they have snow. And just as a warning, if you're thinking of leading a STEM consortium grant, you want to take a deep breath, because the entire proposal, including all of those many forms that you had to have from all of the institutions, the one we submitted was 236 pages. So I can tell you when I got to hit finally submit, I was really glad that was over. It was a lot. But throughout the consortium, we're seeing great retention results. And these are coming from the evaluation team put together this slide showing retention over the different 6 institutions. The dark purple bar is showing 1-year retention, and so that's for multiple cohorts, 2016, 2017, and 2018, and those are just for the first 3 schools, and then, so Boulder, us, and Washington State. And then the 3 newer schools that joined the consortium, Boise State, Illinois, and UCSD, they're showing 1-year retention for 2 years of students, so 2017 and 2018, and then 2-year retention is just for the year of the students who entered in 2017. And UCSD has really high retention rates. That's a hard school to get into, as you probably know. Okay, so questions are, what are ideas to recruit students to your STEM project? And so many universities have, an Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity, or a lead diversity officer. So you want to work with them because, they can help you find underrepresented students and students from low-income backgrounds who are interested in STEM. I think a really important strategy is There are some high schools out there in underserved communities that have amazing high school counselors. They are people that will pick up and offer they have a core set of students whom they see as college bound, and they will go to the ends of the earth to support these students. And so they would love to share your scholarship with their target students. So those people can be really important. If you ever have a chance to go meet them in person, face-to-face is really important. There are nonprofit college prep programs out there, national ones, the Posse Foundation, if your institution is partners with them, or QuestBridge. We have local ones, Rainier Scholars, Making Connections, New York City has Prep for Prep. But really important is word of mouth. And word of mouth is in part, for example, we have the key high schools with which we work, the kids now learn from each other about STARS. We also have younger siblings. So this year that we have somebody's younger brother and we have somebody's younger sister. So once you get the word out there that you have this program and it's successful, it gets easier to recruit the students. Okay, so how do we do the admissions process to STARS? Well, we work with UW Admissions overall, who helps us identify students who fit our profile. We reach out to these students to encourage them to apply to STARS. And really powerful is we have the current students call the prospective students, and we give them a script. And it's really powerful to hear from a student who comes from a background like yours or from your community. We also send snail mail, and I remember hearing from some students who are in the program later on, they were so thrilled to get something in the mail, or maybe surprised, because this generation doesn't get a lot of mail. And I mean, I'm embarrassed to say, but my older son, when he was 22 or 23, didn't know how to use a stamp, and I didn't make that up. So getting mail is a big deal. We send multiple emails, and of course, we always reach out to those favorite high school counselors. Okay, typically, somewhere 100, 200 students or so will apply, and we have, staff and read the applications. I help some too in tie-breaking cases. They're all read twice with a rubric and scored. Then some students are invited to interview a subset, and that's the key between the lower retention from the first year and after Sonia came. And those interviews are really critical. And from that pool, we might invite around 30 students to join STARS. And sometimes students have made their college decision based on whether or not they were admitted to STARS. Okay, and here's Sonia. This is what she is looking for in students when they apply to STARS. So it's really clear that they need to be willing to work hard, because engineering curricula are really hard. And we have a motto, what works is work. Well, we want students who are going to work hard. We're looking for students who have resilience, who won't just, give up at the first obstacle. They clearly should have an interest in engineering and be able to articulate it, and maybe not perfectly well because they may not have had much exposure to engineering, but at least it would be better that they like science and math versus somebody told them they should be an engineer, but they have no idea what engineering is. And then here's an important one, understanding of the STARS model, which actually is going to answer one of the questions that has come in. Something that I forgot to say is that the Red Shirt program, just like going back to the athletic model, it's expected to be a 5-year program. Now, all of our students are getting financial aid. They're getting their tuition and fees paid by the university. They often, when they enter their departments, get additional scholarship money, and also the STEM grant has been really helpful. So they are not having to take out a lot of loans. But it's important that when the students interview with Sonia, they understand the STARS model, which means that they could be here for 5 years. They are going to be required to take extra courses and extra workshops, and they have to work hard. You don't want someone who acts like they're doing you a favor by joining your program, because we don't need that. As it turns out, some students are graduating in 4 years, in particular in computer science and human-centered design and engineering. Some departments, have curricula that are faster to get through. So these are things that Sonia looks for. And lastly, I'm going to give you some thoughts, my thoughts about people who are thinking of submitting an STEM grant. And I don't have a wonderful answer for number one. This is very institution dependent. How do you figure out let's say you're just a regular professor. So in other words, you're just a member of electrical and computer engineering. You're not an administrator, but you found this opportunity and you'd like to get funds for your students. You will have to work with your chair on how this will fit into your work profile, right? Could it be a course release? That would be wonderful. That's totally up to your department. Now that there's more salary, you could take salary. It didn't used to be like that, when in the 85% scholarship model. Could it be part of your research? Because, you could, get a human subjects approval and ultimately, publish on your program. But it's not incredibly obvious, and I think this is an ongoing discussion that I think people could have. So again, more thoughts. It certainly fits well with a STEM administrator, so this fit beautifully into my role as associate dean. But ultimately, it needs to be a labor of love. You should really want and enjoy being able to make a difference on some really fabulous students. That was very meaningful to me. And there are fabulous students. And so again, here are some more pictures of our STAR students. There's Sonia again in the purple on the right. And so to learn more, so first of all, I just this week, in fact, submitted a conference proposal to Dr. Connie Della Piana in the STEM program. And so I would love to, if it's funded, I would love to be able to host a conference where we would bring in people who are interested in starting their own Red Shirt programs and then talk about the four key elements, meet the teams. The other institutions in our Red Shirt Consortium would also participate, give you looks at our curricula, all kinds of things. So that would be wonderful. I'd love for it to be funded. I put my email address, so if anybody is interested in learning more about STARS or Red Shirt programs, please send me an email and I'll put you on the list. And if in fact it gets funded, then be happy to invite you. And we've included some travel funds. In addition, next month during the ASWE virtual conference, we are having a virtual workshop about our Red Shirt programs. And I'm not even going to say the date offhand because I don't want to say the wrong one, but it's in the program. So that those are two more ways to learn about Red Shirt programs. Okay, so now why don't I, if this is okay, I'm going to look at the questions. Oops, no, don't do that. Okay, yeah, I can make my, oh wow, okay, there are lots of questions. Oh, let me go from the top. Okay, Artie, okay. So the first question, which is a good one, you mentioned using word of mouth to recruit, sharing info with faculty and professional advisors. Do you recommend this over collaborating with your admissions office? That has worked well for us. I think I would say it really depends on the relationship you have with your admissions office. We're at a university here with over 45,000 students, and so our admissions team is very lean, and so there really wasn't a lot of space to go in and ask them to do this for us. And again, we think the interviews are really critical, and so that is what has worked for us. So I can't really recommend. I would say it's context dependent, or perhaps in concert. You go out and do the recruitment, and perhaps your admissions officer can make the decision. So I would say that. Okay, the second question says, what was the amount of scholarship that each student received for the first grant? And that it totally varied. It depended on the student's unmet need, and UW is a place where the students do have to take out loans or work study, or just have a big hole to fill somehow. And so it varied between the unmet need, and the maximum, which was $10,000. So it was very much student dependent based on their financial aid package. Okay. Okay, the next one said, how do you recruit students to take surveys if they are non-STAR students? I think there may have been focus groups with food or a drawing for a gift card. So I think small incentives can help you recruit students to take surveys if they are not in your core group. In other words, if they're in the comparison group. Those kind of small incentives also work for your core students. Okay, and then the next one I really like, they said, do the students fall behind because they don't have Calculus 1 in the first semester? Are they behind their peers? So I answered that by saying, yes, our students do have to spend up to 5 years here. However, there is research shows that outcomes are in engineering are dependent on a student's first grade, or the grade in the first math course. In fact, Professor Callahan did some work on this when she was at Boise State. And it's better for your student to step back a course and do really well in the first course than to go in over their head and do poorly in their, if say they start in Calc 1 before they're ready, or we're starting Calc 2 when they should have started in Calc 1. So I am a big fan, again, of having students make sure that they get the foundations and that they do well, because it builds their confidence, helps with their feelings of belonging, etc. Okay, the next question says, yes, are we recruiting from students who already decided to declare a STEM major? Yes, we are. We do recruit from students who applied to UW for STARS. The early stage recruiting we have that Math Academy the summer before freshman year, at UW. We have a very lean recruitment team, which is one person, for the college. So, we try to partner with the recruitment team in our Office of Minority Affairs and Diversity for sure, but we don't have a big recruitment staff ourselves. Okay. Here's one regarding the prerequisite STARS courses. Are these tuition-based with a course for credit, or is this program-based, i.e. not for credit? So the students certainly get credit for these courses, and it's included in their tuition. However, it doesn't satisfy, electrical and computer engineering requirements, but it can certainly satisfy, extra credits. Yes, they are extra courses. We're trying to make up for K-12 education that was weak. So yes. Okay. Oh, I like this one. What are students' perceptions of being set apart for coming from low-achieving high schools, first-gen, etc.? Do any students feel less than, or because they are on a red shirt or purple sweatshirt? I like that. And that is a really great question, and I worried about it, but pretty soon, and I need to give all the credit to Sonia. Sonia came in, we got the grant in May 2013. She moved to Seattle in July 2013 and started work August 1st, 2013. She came in with very high expectations for our students. And you know what? Students will meet the high bar. And so that's why the students have gotten such high grades. And so, whereas I was worried that, yes, people would think they were getting, that they were going to be seen as less than, to quote the question from Professor Jimenez. In fact, because the students have done so well, and faculty know that they do well, that you see the students in groups all the time. You see the students wearing their purple sweatshirts. You see, this really made me happy. The students who finished in 2019, as fifth-year seniors, they were still rooming together, groups of 4 or 5 of them. So they are really good friends. And so maybe there are some of these issues, but the success and the fact that the faculty think that they're really great has really, I think, helped eliminate what could have possibly been seen as stigma. Okay. Oh, here's the, ooh, that's tough. Okay. We can, let's see. Yeah. Okay, here's a good one. Do you have a web page for the Red Shirt on your college website? That's an easy one. And yes, we have an extensive STARS web page. Again, if you email me, I'd be happy to point you to it. One nice thing on our web page is we have cases where we appeared in the media. So they're really well-written stories by, new Seattle Times authors. There's also the University Central the University Central Communications produced an immersive story about STARS back in fall 2018. So it's this beautiful story with 2 short videos with 2 different students and a 2-minute each, and then a 1-minute video with Sonia. So it really, the students talk about the impact of the program on them, and you could learn more that way. So again, please email me, and I'm happy to, share that with you. Let's see. Okay, one question was, can you share information on the interview process for STARS? Is it the same across all consortium partners? So it's definitely not the same, but, again, Sonia is looking for various, qualities in her students. Each interview always has 2 people. Before the pandemic, if they lived within several hours of Seattle, she brought them in person. Now, of course, all of the interviews were done by Zoom. And it would be up to her if she's willing to share the questions. I haven't asked her that. We obviously don't want the questions to get out to the students, but you can email me and I could answer that. Yeah, someone asked, in the age of social distancing and schools closed for COVID, how would you suggest identifying students to invite in advertising the program? Oh boy, I'm really hoping that some kind of K-12, that K-12 is open in the fall and and that it would be the same. I don't have a crystal ball, but basically we will use the same, process of working with our partners, working with admissions, working with those really wonderful counselors. Okay, somebody said, I would like to know what students need to include or answer in their application to the program. It's possible, well, they have to answer a series of 4 essays, and this is actually after they've already applied to all their colleges. So, sometimes they're really tired, they're sick of the admissions process. However, we want students who can work hard. So yeah, they're gonna have to go through another hurdle. But it's basically they answer questions like, tell us a time when you worked really hard. Tell us why you're interested in engineering. I like the one, tell us the time when you stood up for what you believed in. And sometimes there's essays about, students who wind up being allies for other groups of students when they're faced with, racist comments or, homophobic comments. So, we're looking for kids who think broadly. And I also like, there's a really cute short question that just says, tell us, one small thing you'd like your colleagues to know about you. And my favorite was once from a student who said he was 47th in line to be king of a small kingdom in Africa. That was very interesting. So, okay, and here's one. Do students receive funding for all 5 years? I thought SM only allows up to 4 years. So we actually only give them funding 1 or 2 years from the SM grant for STARS. Otherwise, again, they get funding from the university, from their departments, from the college. And again, students from low-income backgrounds, they're typically eligible for financial aid. So we use it sometimes for first-year students. We use it sometimes for students in their 5th year, depending, again, on the student need. Yeah. Okay. It's about 1:20. Ira, should I keep answering questions or hand it back to you? Uh-oh.
Sorry, you have time, Eve.
Oh, okay. Let me find this question. Okay, you can stop me. Okay. Oh, here's a good one. Silly question. It's actually a really good question from Professor Sandrin from Arizona ASU. How do you pay for sweatshirts since we can't use NSF money for this? So I did not talk about the massive fundraising that we have done for the STARS program, but we have been very successful raising private donor funds. And we had somebody, we never met these people, but they had bought a property out here and they were going to retire, but then they decided to retire back east and they sold the property. And the next thing we knew, they gave us an $83,000 endowment. So we've partnered very closely with professional, advancement / development people in the college. One of the really terrific things they came up with is this, what we call a STARS showcase, where we go and have 3 or 4 students from different departments, different genders, different ethnic groups, different stages of the program, and Sonia interviews them and asks them a series of questions to talk about the impact of STARS on them. And now we can even have recent graduates. And the students by far are your best ambassadors. Some of them have amazing stories to tell. And the last STARS showcase we had was last summer, and one of the couples that went to the group gave us a gift that is going to pay for 2 years of a staff person to become our internship coordinator. So this person will help our students find summer internships, help them find permanent employment. So it's a great opportunity. That will free up some of my time to work with the students on having, helping them apply to grad school, because some of them do go to grad school. We have a student who's in her first year at Stanford, and we're very proud of her. So yeah, we don't use NSF money for sweatshirts, but we use gift funding. We've also had success with corporate funding because they want, everybody, the corporate sector says they want to hire diverse students. Well, here we have some really well-prepared, really smart, really thoughtful students who are really thankful to have an opportunity. And so that's another strategy. So in fact, if our Red Shirt Conference proposal is funded, that would be one of the sessions where we would bring in the advancement folks and talk about strategies we've used and talk about, show our marketing materials. So it is certainly a program that resonates well with funders. Oh, in fact, the Illinois Red Shirt program, which is called Arise, they got $1 million gift from Amazon a few years ago and some special Amazon-only internships for their students. So honestly, that kind of stuck in my craw a bit because where is Amazon from? But they had a very successful alum from Illinois, was the president of a division at Amazon. So that was a nice outcome for them. So we were very happy. So, that's a great question from Dean Lively Brooks at Oregon. How do you tease out the impact of having designated good instructors leading STARS courses from other key program elements, namely the community building, skills development, intrusive advising? And I'm going to quote Sonia, this is a holistic program. So all of the pieces are critical. They work together because we have had many, many potential funders, people of interest want to scale the program, where scale means more students. But this really works well with about 30 students. One year we had 40, one year we had 50. It was exhausting. That meant more staff, more management. Students, the last 10 or last 20 students you admit are the ones who don't fit your program as well. So we feel very strongly to have a smaller cohort, but that all of the elements of the program are critical. So my answer is I don't know how to tease out the impact of what is the most important. I'm going to say all of it is. Okay. Let's see. Let me see. Somebody said, what does the shirt have to do with it? And that's the metaphor. Let's see. I think somebody asked somebody from Dr. White at Rutgers University, Newark. By the way, I'm from Lawrence Township, New Jersey, so nice to see a question from New Jersey. For your STEM grant, what qualifies as low income for your institution? I thought low income students had to be Pell Grant recipients. So I think you get to define it. That's what we've done. Most of our students have Pell Grants, but and you can't give the NSF funding to students who, are DACA, so they have to be, permanent residents or citizens. But I think you have flexibility. You just, make sure they have unmet need. So, and here's somebody from Eastern, Professor Cavinato from Eastern Oregon, said, can an administrator such as a dean be the PI of an STEM, or would it be better to have a faculty member? So this is a question really more for the NSF. And so the RFP really says pretty strongly they want it to be a regular faculty member teaching in a department. So, but I am an administrator, but I also am in a faculty member in electrical and computer engineering, and I teach. So it keeps you busy. I don't know what the right answer to that is. But again, I think as a faculty member, you want to figure out how, again, you can make this count as part of your load, your workload. So, okay, Dr. Wagstaff, do you want to go back? Do you want to take it back since there's only 4 minutes?
You can go to 4:30 with questions and then close out with the last 2 slides.
I see. Okay. Here's a really good one from Professor Luther from Valencia College. What are some ways that you have maintained cohort activities / engagement given the pandemic? And as usual, Sonia was way ahead of the curve. So the minute things shut down here, and we were actually the first university to go virtual, she had a staff person send all of the students noise-canceling headphones. She had a staff person send them whiteboards and markers and erasers because our students learn math by working on the whiteboard, right? What you teach, you learn. So now they're all stuck at home. She gave them equipment to, have it work better at home. What I also really liked is before the spring quarter started, she had a staff person do a tech check with every single STAR student in the 2 youngest cohorts to make sure that they had the technology they needed and to make sure they knew how to use Zoom and they knew how to participate. So the first question is make sure that you, equip your students with appropriate technology, but they still have the first year students still have their STAR seminar weekly. So in fact, I joined it yesterday where we had an alumni panel that included one of our STARS graduates from the first cohort, and they were all there and they know they have to be there. So they, they're still in courses together. Something I found really interesting is that 10 students who are in cohort 6 or who are namely second year STARS students are living on campus. So for whatever reason, they were able to stay. And I think that's really interesting. And certainly, they're socially distanced, but I think it's helping that they understood that they needed to be here versus going to their home situation, which may not have been ideal. And we all know about how some students are really struggling at home. So they made that choice. And I thought that was really interesting. So, okay. What do you have? Oh yeah, here's one. Where did that go? Do you have a limit on the number of credit hours for engineering programs, usually state mandated, and do they get a waiver since they may end up with more credits due to taking the extra, calculus or, the STARS math class? So that's a great question. The university does have, these 180 credits or 210 credit flags, but the advisors are able to waive those really easily in the advising system. So I have never heard of that being an issue. So, but that is a good question, and obviously, you need to leave flexibility. So thank you for that question. So, okay, well, over here it's 1:29. So I'd like to thank all of you for your attention. And again, if you could please email me if you're interested in learning more, either a pointer to our website, or even better, if you might be interested in attending the conference. If we get it funded, I'll keep track of your name. So thank you very much. Oh, here we go. Oh, okay. So now I'm handing over to Dr. Wagstaff. Are you there? At least I think I am.
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
Here you go.
Next slide.
Okay, but yeah, webinar follow-up.
So we just wanted to thank you all for joining us. And there were some questions about the slides. Yes, the slides and the recording will be posted on the STEM website. Give us until about mid next week. So by the end of the day, next Wednesday, they should be there, as well as the on-demand recording. We'd also like for you to please complete the post-webinar survey that you will receive as soon as this webinar concludes. And finally, in order to continue to keep this community engaged and to provide a platform for you to share resources, events, and opportunities, we set up an STEM LinkedIn page. So it's called the AAAS STEM Initiative. So please follow us and share resources and information there. There were some very specific questions that are more appropriate for the NSF STEM program officers. So if you have some very specific questions about the STEM program, please go to the STEM program page on the NSF website, and there you'll see the program solicitation. You'll also see contact information for the STEM program officers that you can follow up with as well. So we wanted to thank you for joining us on this Friday, and have a great weekend.